So I'll move on to introduce Caron, who we are, as I say, so delighted is joining us this evening. And Caron Bradshaw will be sharing her insights into what it takes to overcome imposter syndrome. Since completing her Law LLB at Westminster in 1993, Caron is now an award-winning Chief Executive of the Charity Finance Group, where she has worked since 2010. Caron is also a trained barrister and has a wide array of experience across charity, regulation and law, policy, member support and professional ethics. She has been recognised for several awards in the charity and finance sectors, and most recently honoured with an OBE for her services to charity in the New Year's Honours List for 2021. During this talk, Caron will look at defining imposter syndrome, what it is and what it isn't, and she will also discuss the importance of recognising your own strengths and leaning into them, and recounting what she has learned from her own career journey and experience. This talk will provide insight and advice on how you can build confidence when you're feeling anything but confident.
If you Google this, you'll get all sorts of different phrases that pop up. Broadly, they are around doubting your ability and feeling like a fraud, so feeling out of depth, feeling like you don't belong in a particular environment, thinking about that internal experience of believing that you're just not as competent as other people perceive you to be, and that sort of psychological pattern in which as an individual you doubt your skills, your talent, your accomplishments, that you have this persistent, almost paralysing internal fear that someone's going to find you out, that you're going to be exposed as a fraud. And these are words that I suspect resonate with you. So there are all sorts of different bits and pieces that both these ladies have created, but one of these I thought was really resonant with me and has manifested itself in the workplace for me many, many times, and when I was studying actually, where you have this overriding self-doubt and anxiety that just totally either paralyses you so that you just keep pushing that piece of work around until the very deadline, like a piece of cold broccoli on your plate that you just don't want to touch, or you go the opposite way where you work so hard on something that you just never get quite out of the blocks and never quite get beyond that researching and prep and that side of things. And then when you do manage to finally, at that very 11th hour, get the piece of work in, that sort of overwhelming feeling of relief. And if you happen to have bluffed your way through and managed to get a decent grade at the end of it, or that somebody thinks that what you're doing is a good piece of work and gives you praise or gives you accolade for it, that you suddenly feel this sort of overwhelming, oh no, don't give me that, don't give me that. And it becomes this sort of cycle. And seeing this imposter cycle that IMS created, I found really, really resonant. I would definitely suggest that you do go on to also Pauline Clancy's website, and she's got within there something that she calls Clancy's Imposter Phenomenon Scale, and it asks you a load of different questions on the various different things, and it will give you a score. And I've come out as moderately an imposter even now when I've got so many things that are under my belt as positive accolades or positive contributions to my CV, as it were. And then my top tips. I haven't talked much about a coach and a mentor, but to go back to the community piece, please think about the fact that you need a community around you. You cannot be vulnerable without safety. You can only be safe if you have people around you that will hold you and will support you. Coaching and mentoring, I have for the last 15 years had either or both a coach or a mentor, and I would strongly recommend them to you. I have found them to be able to unlock my thinking, to give me a safe space to work through things. A lot of people ask what's the difference between a coach and a mentor. Well, I'd say if you had a Venn diagram, the vast majority of coaching and mentoring sits in the same space. The bit that sets it apart is a coach will probably never give you an answer. They'll say the answers within you, and they'll ask you questions to help you work through and get your answers for yourself. And most of the time, 99.9% of the time, the information is inside you. You do have the answers. A mentor, on the other hand, will more often say, well, here's my experience. Here's a story I can tell you about what's happened to me, and may give you some advice and the ability to sort of open into other networks and connections and help you in that way. But both have absolute worth their weight in gold, and I found them really, really useful. I honestly think that fear and excitement give you the same physiological response, and they do. It's just our mind that gets in the way and starts going, all this adrenaline that's pumping through me is because I want to run away. But equally, when you get that flutter of nerves in your belly, it's just the same flutter of nerves when your husband grabs your hand and looks at you in a particular way. That sort of, that excitement is just the same as the fear that you feel when you step onto a stage or you're about to do something that you haven't encountered before. I I really swear by meditation. I don't do it all the time. I probably should do it more than I do, but I use it almost as like a plaster when I get a cut, or a hot bath when I've got sore muscles. So I will meditate as and when I need it, and I also will carve out space to do things that are breathing spaces for myself, whether that's reading a book or laying in a hammock or going for a walk or having a bath. Try not to do too much of the reaching for a glass of wine as my moment for myself, because that also can become quite negative. Brené Brown talks about strategic breathing, so breathing in for 4, holding it for 4, breathing out for 4, holding it for 4, or imagining a box and doing that around the lines. Breathing is incredibly useful. The tactic that I used to use with my kids before I knew any about this, but now that I reflect back on it, I see where that is imagining a white room and the anxiety is a black spot, finding a door and shoveling it out and then shutting the door. And that's sort of real visual. Or even better, again, I did this with my kids, writing it down on a piece of paper and then getting rid of the piece of paper, throwing it away. There's something very cathartic about that physicality of going, you're gone, listening to good music, laughing, doing things that make you feel up. When I was in the grips of my breakdown, my then chair, Ian Theodorson, who's a fantastic man, absolutely love him to bits, was the CFO at the Church of England. And he said to me, what are you doing to fill up your bath? And I thought, what on earth are you talking about, Ian? He said, imagine that your life is a bath. When we're stressed, the plug's out. The good things are the tap being turned on. And when we're feeling stressed or feeling anxious, we tend to do things that withdraw us. So we stop going out to see our friends. We don't have time to do something for us because we've got that piece of work to do that we're angsting about. And we stop filling up our bath, but we don't put the plug back in. So if you've got water pouring in at a lesser rate than it's pouring out, you end up sitting on the bottom of a cold, empty bath. That was his notion. Do things that is counterintuitive. When I was in the middle of the grip of it all and I was doing ridiculously long hours, he said to me, you need to fill up your bath.